English, Adam Wheeler and David Emmett on the show today. As you'll see, David is in the Sepang Media Centre, and he's our boots on the ground for this week. Ad, we're going to come to you first, though, because you're a man in a hurry. You're on your way out the door, so only have you for a couple of minutes. And as usual, the MotoGP liveries war is the big talking point heading into Sepang, and lots of changes on the bikes for this year. I know you're excited about it.
Yeah, hi Steve. It's great to join you both quickly, especially as Dave. I know it's it must be what 7, 8 p.m. over there now in Malaysia.
Yeah, nearly 7:45.
Right. Okay. Well, it's been the first busy day for you, I guess, in terms of interviews and getting a lot of activity done as before track action starts tomorrow. But yeah, thoughts on the liveries. I think Suzuki probably are winning so far. You know, we've had a few. Low key is probably the wrong word, but you know, in terms of bike appearances, there's been nothing spectacular so far. Suzuki touch-ups have been pretty good. I mean, they're still lacking that main sponsor, of course. Monster have quite a bit of prevalence on the motorcycle. But then also, you know, the Monster Energy Yamahas, not a great deal of variation like we saw, you know, with Red Bull KTM. And of course, Repsol Honda were expecting pretty much the same thing that we've seen for the last 15 years. So it still looks like a smart motorcycle. But I mean, from the quotes we've heard from people that have been doing media debriefs and some of the files you sent through, Dave, which we'll hear later on this short show. It's interesting to hear Fabio Quartararo speak as a world champion, as a defending world champion, and really how he's trying to bounce a lot of pressure off his plate for this year by saying he's achieved his lifetime goal. He doesn't think of himself as defending a #1. I mean, I think he said to you, Dave, he only has one little star on the back of his testing helmet to denote his status as the leader of the pack. So that's kind of quite a, I wouldn't say an unexpected approach, because we know he's not exactly a super flashy kind of guy. But it is quite, it doesn't shout of confidence to me. And also from Yamaha, you know, Massimo Meregali, that, you know, the team manager, is the team manager? I can't remember his official job title now. But he was talking about contract negotiations with Fabio in his debrief early, and he says that things are quite advanced and they're hoping to get things wrapped up early. So that was just some of the tidbits I pulled out today. I'm not too sure what you guys thought.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about the Repsol Honda, that bike is completely new, and the fairing's new and everything. So, you know, practically, they're going to have to change the livery a little bit just for it to be able to fit on there. And of course, obviously, the HRC logo has been changed. It is now italic rather than bold. But we shall see. I mean, like, I think the Honda is going to be a little bit different. A bit like the Suzuki. I really like Suzuki. That little bit of black just brings the rest of it out. It makes it a lot more, it just sort of, you know, accentuates it. And I think, yeah, the Yamaha, I was looking at the Yamaha and I had absolutely no idea whether it had changed or not. So that's, that was that. Fabio, for me, talking about, it seemed that he was trying to take the pressure off of himself, trying not to think about what has happened and just look to the future. And that's why he doesn't want that #1. He doesn't want it hanging over his head. He doesn't want it as the extra pressure. He wants to start from zero. And in fact, it was interesting, both Joan Mir and Fabio Quartararo said, you know, look, we're starting from zero. It's a new year. Everyone's at the same place.
Okay, and we'll talk to you over the course of the weekend. We'll let you get onto your work. David, obviously you mentioned Joan Mir there, and that's one of the big talking points coming into Sepang, because obviously last year we saw the frustration starting to come to the fore between Mir and Suzuki. He wants more to be done from the bike. Suzuki obviously want to hold on to a world champion, their first world champion since Kenny Roberts. But it's going to be a struggle for them. And we're at that point now of the year where already we're going to start talking about the rider market. Fabio Quartararo is the other name on it as well. He wants more power from the Yamaha. He wants more money from Yamaha as well. So that's going to be one of the big things to keep an eye on over the course of the next couple of months as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I have been sort of trying to talk to people about how they see the rider market. I had talked to one sort of senior team member, and they were saying basically they didn't expect there to be, well, first of all, they didn't expect there to be an early rider market. You know, they don't expect it to really sort of kick off until much later in the season. And the only name that they were sort of kicking about was Joan Mir, but also they were saying, you know, look, I read this in the press. I don't know whether it's true or not. I just read it in the media. When I mentioned Fabio Quartararo, he sort of, nah, don't think so. So I'm not sure about Joan Mir himself. He was non-committal about Suzuki. He was very much, look, nothing is signed and no decisions are made. It's all open. But he also said this test is going to be really, really important. It's going to play a big part in his decision-making going forward. But he also said, I'm quite impressed with what Suzuki have bought. Suzuki bought a new engine for the Jerez test. They've bought some new aero here, some more bits and pieces. Obviously, the ride height device is now a really, really important part of the entire dynamics package. So I think, I mean, it's not about Joan Mir. If he doesn't finish top, then he walks. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think it's more he has to feel that there is enough potential in the bike that he can actually fight for a championship. He made it very clear he wants to fight for the championship. Alex Rins, same. You know, he was asked what would be a good season for you. He says a good season for me would be if I finished champion. So yeah, that was interesting. I think Suzuki is definitely one to watch, and we will find out quite quickly whether the bike has made enough of a step. We were asking about rivals, asking all the riders about rivals. Obviously, the main and obvious rivals were Fabio Quartararo, defending champion, Pecco Bagnaia, because he was so strong at the end of last year. Marc Marquez, he's back, looks to be fit, and there's the new Honda. The new Honda can either work or it cannot work. You don't know. We won't know until it's actually out on track. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. But Mir really basically said his goal was he wants to be fighting for the championship to the end of the season. And if he feels like he's getting swamped earlier on, then I think we might see him making a move. But we're not. I don't really expect to see really big decisions made until the middle of the season. And even then, there's a feeling that a lot of people are going to be staying where they are rather than moving about.
Yeah, and Dave, you mentioned there about Marc as well. Obviously, this is going to be his first time back on a MotoGP bike since he had his training crash back in November. He's been out on track. He's been on CBR 600s. He's been out on the RCV road bike. He's done a bit of motocross. He's been back into his training. He looks fit from pictures, from videos, from all that. What was he like whenever you were talking to him earlier on?
I haven't actually spoken to him yet. I mean, I've seen him in the paddock, seen him running about. I've said hi, and that's about it. But he looks really focused, incredibly focused. I mean, people have seen him sort of with his shirt off because it's too hot to be running around with a shirt on. It's really, really hot.
Shirt on, though, yeah, Dave.
I have just spare everyone's blushes. I've kept my shirt on, but yeah, he's looking very fit, very ripped, and he just looks really, really hungry. I think he's got like 2 years behind him, 2 years of frustration. First, the crash, not a lot he could do about that, but it was frustrating that it took so long to get fit. And then last year, just as things were coming good, he felt things were getting better, and he has another. He had that crash that sort of messed with his vision. That seems to be fixed now, but I think he just looks like this is really it. He's not hanging about.
Yeah, and obviously enough, David, one of the other big talking points this week was we had the shakedown test. Aprilia, the only manufacturer that still has concessions, so the only manufacturer they're able to run their full factory riders. So we had Maverick Vinales out on track. He set the pace at the start of the week in the shakedown test. As usual, it's the winter, so Maverick looks great. But when you look at Aprilia, this is a massive season for them. They made a big step forward for the first half of last year, kind of lost their way in the second half of last year. And now they're at that point where they had big steps to make and they made them. It now gets more and more difficult for them.
Yeah, but I mean, they have a new exhaust, which means that they are clearly working on acceleration. It's really hard to tell. Sure, Maverick was fastest and Aleix was second fastest, but they were the only two full factory riders on full factory bikes out on track. The rest, there were 4 rookies on track. There were a bunch of test riders, and the test riders were setting respectable times. So it's really hard to tell just how competitive they were. And like I was going back, and this test is really difficult to measure anything by. In the past 10 years, the person who was fastest at the test has only won the championship twice. So it's not a fantastic record as a predictor. What you see is, you find out roughly where people stand, what the strengths are, and that's it. So yeah, I think there is. I think there is. I don't think you can say by the end of this test who's going to be where, but we'll certainly learn a lot about who's done a good job, who still has work to do. The other thing is we've only got 2 days at Sepang rather than the normal 3 days, and sort of all of the riders said this is a bit of an issue because they're going to go to Mandalika, they're going to spend at least a day, 1 day, maybe 2 days learning the track, trying to figure it out, learning all the little sort of bits and pieces about it, and then 1 day they don't have any data for the track, so they've got no real comparison, they've got no base data. They've been testing at Sepang for something like 2 decades, so they understand this track really, really well. And not having any base data means it's Mandalika makes it really difficult to know whether you're doing a good job or not. So that's going to be a bit deceptive, and everyone was a little bit worried about that. So we will only really see how things develop. It's going to be really important to develop the bike. Obviously, they can't change the engines except for Aprilia. It's going to be really important to develop the rest of the bike. Chassis, air. Well, no, they're only allowed one aero update as well. But getting your aero right is going to be important, and developing the chassis and working with other bits and pieces throughout the season to make the bike as consistent as possible for to be competitive. Because it's going to be about consistency. Everything is so close that the rider who is the most consistent, just as we saw with Fabio Quartararo, they're going to be the favourite.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to be busy over the course of the weekend, David. You're going to be on site. You're going to be getting all the news. Obviously, Adam's going to be involved, Neil as well, myself. So we're going to be trying to bring through the Paddock Notes show all the way through the weekend, get everyone up to speed all the way through. And we're going to try and do a few different things over the course of this year as well for our Patreon supporters. So we're going to try and incorporate a lot of additional content all the way through the season. So, David, until tomorrow, it's great to have you out in the media centre in Malaysia. And obviously, you look like you're glad to have been in the air conditioning for the last hour.
Well, yeah, that's because you can't see you can't see my armpits on here, which have been positively gushing. It is, you forget just how hot it is until you stand outside, and you have to slow. Normally, when I'm in the paddock, I'm rushing around, running, like walking really, really fast. And then you do that here. You do that for like 50 meters, and you think, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out for me very well. I think I better slow down. So yeah, it's hot.
Yeah, I'm happy enough that the Superbike testing this week is down in Portimao. It'll be nice weather, few days golf beforehand to acclimatise myself to the Portuguese weather, and then gear myself up for a nice, easy time in the pit lane as well. So, David, we'll talk to you tomorrow, and thanks again for jumping on the call.